Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to RebelsCast. My name is Jonathan, and today I'm joined by Nicki.
Hello. And
today we have a guest, Jason from the Wampa's Lair. Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Sweet. So we finally got to the, we've been pretty busy lately. Glad we finally got to record and that we got to have a guest on. So what were your initial thoughts about this episode, Jason?
Oh my goodness. I loved it. It was a great episode. Intense episode, I think, is probably the best word that I would use for my reaction for it. And of course, we'll get more into detail as to what those is later. But I just initial thoughts, intense, but I loved it. So I'm really glad Rebels went where they did with this episode.
What about you, Nicki?
I feel the same way. I was so glad to see that they went to this darker place with this episode, and it was. I watched them again. I watched the first part of Empire Day, and then I watched Gathering Forces back to back last night to rewatch them, and they just fit. It's such a great linear story. I mean, it works well in two parts, but it works even better if you watch them back to back. And yes. I just thought it was intense. It was dark. I think it was probably one of the best episodes we've had of the show so far. So I loved it. I thought I've watched it several times.
Agreed.
How about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree. Just echoing what you guys said. I mean, this series has come a long way since we watched Spark Rebellion for 500 times. Finally seeing this episode. Definitely looking forward to the next half of the season. But yeah, overall a great episode. Hearing more about the Force and hearing more about this relationship between Ezra and Kanan.
Right.
So to start off, it's continued from that cliffhanger with Zebo and Ezra, and we see that Zebo, he got like the implants, and we see that he was most likely he's been risking his life to break in and to try to steal some of these secrets,
Right. First he's like accidentally downloaded all this information into his Lobot-esque headgear, and then he's trying to do something good with it, and but it's also affecting his his mentality. It's affecting how he acts and responds, and I think when you have that much information that's been like forced into you, that's probably the only way you can respond is by being a little nutty and disjointed.
Jason, what did you think of in the previous episode, we saw all these battle plans, including the AT-AT. So what did you think of Zebo's information he got and his whole he's speaking, he's talking gibberish and all sorts of other nonsense.
Well, it was interesting. It was something I didn't expect them to do, just have someone download a whole bunch of secrets, and that the Empire apparently has lax enough computer security that would actually happen. But it was interesting that it did happen, and it made for to use another George Lucas word, it made a great MacGuffin for these two episodes. But one thing I did notice upon my last rewatch of the episode, and skipping ahead a bit, is when finally Ezra is able to forgive Zebo, and Zebo's able to get more control over his mind, the lights on the implant stop flashing randomly, and they turn off unless he's trying to access it deliberately. So that was a sort of really nice little subtle thing that they threw in there, and I didn't notice it the first couple times watching it, but just watching it last night, I noticed that. So
yeah, I noticed that too, and I think you're absolutely right. It was like finally he's been forgiven, and he's able to kind of calm down a little bit, except when he tries to access him, and because he's got so much in there. And I think knowing what happened to Ezra's parents because of this implant was weighing on him a lot, and because of his relationship with the family. And I did notice that he calmed down a lot after he finally was able to tell someone about what happened to Ezra's parents.
I mean, I think it's interesting that, it's like, and even like Hera and Sabine, they kind of point out, it's like, he couldn't have really done thing against a bunch of, Emperor soldiers. I mean, looks like Zebo, he's not really combat heavy or anything.
No. Plus, Ezra is an angry 15-year-old child.
Yes.
I mean, he reacted appropriately for his age, and he's got a lot of anger, and he's got a lot of sorrow, and 15-year-old boys kind of lash out instead of dealing with the anger. And once he really dealt with it, he was able to reach a calmer place in himself as well, which is why he was able to do what he did at the end. But I think it was absolutely an appropriate response for him to have, is to lash out at everybody. And I think the writers were very cognizant of that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a traumatic incident that has basically shaped the way his life has gone ever since.
Right.
And it's a raw spot for him. And so anything that sort of brings that up, brings it to the forefront of anything, he's going to lash out at. So yeah, Zebo just got the brunt of everything that's been building for the last 8 years or so, whether he deserved it or not. So
it was the kill the messenger kind of thing.
And we'd see Zebo was almost like, this whole time he's like struggling to kind of get through this gibberish and all this stuff, and he's just like trying to kind of express himself how sorry he is, and that most likely as this was happening, he was just basically helpless, but he is able to help, including like he kind of has this knowledge just to fix the hyperdrive. He just kind of walks along and just boom, 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 boom and then they speed off. It's just like, what are you doing, Zebo?
I think with all that stuff in his brain, it's like they say if we were able to access more than 10% of our brain, we would probably go a little mad. I think he just was overwhelmed by emotion and all this information. He didn't know how to deal with it. And when he finally was able to focus, he was able to fix the hyperdrive. He was able to explain to Hera at least what had happened. And, he was forgiven. And I think that forgiveness from Ezra really made the difference for him. I think in being able to kind of relax and not be so frantic.
It helps stabilize him.
Oh, definitely, yeah. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
No problem.
I mean, I think, because when he was upset at the beginning, it's like, there was no way, because, he was kind of lashing out. Like you said, he's a 15-year-old, and he's like, I'll never forgive you, and Zebo's just kind of like, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything, and of course, we can see that Ezra, even when Hera and Sabine, they would kind of explain what happened, it's like Ezra, for these past, 8 years or something, or since he was 8, he's been on his own. So it's almost like, I'm just kind of moving on. They were gone. You messed up. I'm just just want to go forward. He doesn't want to deal with the past.
Right, and I think his parents being taken made him who he is, and it's, his survival skills would not be where they are. He probably wouldn't be able to access the Force as readily. So I think he's come to this place where he's just like, these things happened in my life, and I have to stop blaming things I had no control over. I can't blame Zebo anymore because he really had no control over what happened. This was going to happen whether he was there or whether he could do anything or not. He could have gotten killed if he had tried to stop it. and then we wouldn't have all this information. I think that, he's becoming more mature as he's getting more connected to the Force. And I think he's realizing that it's not all about him and that he has to let go of this anger or else it will consume him.
Right.
It was a
Very
great
true.
Jedi morality tale.
Indeed.
And Kanan, I don't know if he expected that to happen or not, but he's all about trying to clear, his mind so he can be more successful. So.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jason, what did you think about the Inquisitor's TIE fighter and his helmet and his kind of, two-side TIE fighter? It's kind of reminiscent of Vader.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it definitely is, and it's a precursor to what Vader gets. Obviously without the hyperdrive because he's back on board the Star Destroyer. But I thought it was cool. I've never been particularly enthusiastic about the TIE fighter design to begin with. It's just sort of Star Wars and there.
Mm-hmm.
For me. X-Wings, on the other hand, I'm super excited about, but we don't have those in Rebels yet. So TIE Fighters, I mean, it was cool. It was nice and fancy because it had the tracking missile and the fold-up wings and all that stuff. Yeah, no, it was cool. I don't really have anything other to say.
Yeah.
That
I mean, I think it's cool that, just from throughout this season, we have all these callbacks, most notably the use of the gun turrets, and that, Sabine and Kanan get in, and just like, trying to, just like Han and Luke, which I think is really cool.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great callback, and but it's different enough to establish the Ghost on its own, because while the Ghost is obviously meant to be reminiscent of the Millennium Falcon and the way it's used and the way it does things and kind of the way it looks, it's definitely getting established as its own ship, as its own personality within the Star Wars universe. And it is one of the, I don't want to say one of the few things, but it's one of the biggest things I think that is really, I think, establishing itself beyond just Rebels as something that really fits in Star Wars. So, is
totally
the Ghost.
agree.
So,
And I love that it has like a smaller ship. It has
yes,
the Phantom, and it can detach and be its own thing. And I thought that was a really interesting design for a ship, because we've never really seen that before in a Star Wars vehicle. And I totally agree with you. It is one of those things that the Ghost is one of those things that will stand out the most as part of Star Wars canon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing, so like you said, the little tracker missile, that was definitely cool. And it's also often a thing we see in trackers, whether it be Obi-Wan and Attack of the Clones just throwing one at him, or like in the Falcon, like in A New Hope, they put it. We're not quite sure where it is on the tracking, but the whole thing where it's like, let him get away, but it's really a trap, and in here, they make the Inquisitor, he makes him think like he's got away, but just in case, wanted to kind of a little insurance, and he takes the bait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Inquisitor is very smart. I mean, he is not a stupid villain.
No.
He is, I think, wiser than most villains that we've seen in the Star Wars universe, because he is aware of traps. Not to harken back to Admiral Akbar. It's a trap. But he's right there, and he takes risks, and he's cunning and devious, and he thinks things through very, very thoroughly. Like when he showed up on the asteroid base, and he was like, this is a trap. He walks in, and it's like, he knows what's going on. Oh, you thought your kitty cats were gonna protect you, basically. And I was like, then I don't think Ezra and Kanan were expecting his level of awareness. And it's like, this guy could use the Force. Don't mess with the Inquisitor. I mean, He's right up there. I mean, more episodes like that, he's going to be up there with the ranks of Darth Vader. So,
Yeah, it's interesting to me. The Inquisitor is definitely more than a match for the crew of the Ghost. It
oh yeah,
seems, and he seems like he would be able to take them out, at any minute. And it's only by the skin of their teeth that the crew of the Ghost is able to escape and live to fight another day with this guy. And so, every time he shows up in the vicinity of them, you get nervous because he just gives off this air of complete control and deadly skill. And
oh yeah,
it's and you saw it when he was dueling. While Kanan wasn't as caught off guard as he was back in Rise of the Old Masters, he did better. He still wasn't a match in lightsaber combat to the Inquisitor by far.
Right.
But he's a terrifying villain for this crew, because while the crew is good and they work well together, it's not like Han, Luke, and Leia, who's are the big three and can take on the Empire single-handedly almost. So they got to watch out for this guy, and he's always ups the ante whenever he shows up.
Yeah, it's never how are they going to get away from him this time? It's always, oh my God, is this the day he's going to catch them?
Right.
Because you don't know, because he could catch them. I mean, he's that good. I mean, it's only really by luck or something else, outside their control usually, that they're able to get away. And that's one of the things I love about the Inquisitor, is that he is he's better than they are at all of this stuff, and he knows it and they know it, but yet they still manage to, but like you said, by the skin of their teeth, just get out of there really fast before you can jump. And I think he's going to be a very formidable, I mean, he already is a formidable opponent, but I think as he becomes more focused on the crew of the Ghost, because he's got all this other stuff going on, but I think he's really starting to focus more on this crew and saying, I have to bring these people down because they're just a little too slippery for me and for my personal taste. I was like, I'd rather they were dead.
Agreed.
But I have to catch them, and this thing happened and they got away. And this thing happened, and it's like, I need better stormtroopers with me, please. He's just such a great, well-rounded bad guy. He's not like maniacally evil. He's not like twirling his mustache and steepling his fingers going, ha ha ha, excellent. He's not Mr. Burns. But you know what he's after. You know why he's after it. He is single focused, and he will do whatever he has to do, and he does it with style, and he does it with a level of skill that I haven't seen since Yoda took on Dooku. And I watched it over and over again, that lightsaber duel, and I was like, yay, a lightsaber duel. And it was like when he threw the double-sided lightsaber and the spin that thing had on it, it was like so beautiful. I was just like, I just melted. I was like, oh, yes, thank you. That was just so perfect. I've never seen a lightsaber do that. And he's just so cool. And I find myself sometimes going, maybe he should catch them. Maybe I've gone to the dark side because I really love this character.
My only thing with him is that I hope this, as he's running after them to try and get them as they're just about to escape, and he throws the lightsaber and Kanan knocks it away, I hope that doesn't become like a running gag, because we've seen it twice now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that has to stop, right now.
Yeah, you can bring it up once or twice, every now and then, but don't do it every time they face off, because that happened during Rise of the Old Masters, and it happened again this time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I mean, it made sense, but we have to watch the amount of times that happens, because otherwise it's going to be, and I would have gotten them if it hadn't been for the fact that he hit my lightsaber away,
Yeah, with that spinning lightsaber, the only way you were going to stop it was to knock it away with your lightsaber. I mean, that was really the only way to stop that. But yeah, I totally agree with you. They can't. If they do that again, it has to be several episodes away. And I was just thinking about Kanan. You know, Kanan hasn't had that many opportunities to have a lightsaber duel in the last few years. Because really, there's no one else that he could really have a lightsaber duel with, since Rise of the Old Masters. So some people were complaining to me, oh yeah, he wasn't very good. Like, what do you expect? Who's he got to fight with?
Right.
Who's he have to practice with? He's got, like, as far as he knows, he's got the only lightsaber left in the galaxy. So it's not like he can fight himself or give Chopper a lightsaber and try to train with him. So
He'll
I
throw
think
balls at you.
yeah, I think he's.
Oh my goodness!
I think
I got this
he's
mental
just,
picture of Chopper with a lightsaber in each hand, just like wheeling away at somebody. Oh my gosh, I would love
spinning
to
it
see
around. Oh god, now I have to see that. Dave Filoni, please make this happen.
I think one told thing that, we haven't seen, and the crew of the Ghost was like, are you really going to try this? Is trying to drop out of hyperspace in an escape pod, while still in hyperspace. I thought that was pretty
it was
pretty beastly, pretty crazy.
it was something that I've, as a science geek who doesn't really understand science but just loves it, I was like, how would that ever be possible? And it kind of reminded me of this scene in Finding Nemo where they're in the East Australian current and they have to get out of it while they're still in that flow. And I was like, oh my god. Well, if Dory and Marlin can get out of the EAC, is it possible for the Phantom to get out of hyperspace? Because it's just going so fast, and the effects they use, like, to see how it was physically affecting Kanan and Ezra, and I just thought the animation in that sequence was so beautiful that I was like, oh, okay, they did it. Yay! It worked! It worked. Crush was right. It can happen. It was just a beautifully animated sequence, and I look forward to more stuff like that and kind of breaking up our concept of what's possible in Star Wars.
Yeah. It's obviously not recommended.
No.
But
that's something I want to personally do.
No.
Yes, I could see like a little message going across the bottom. If hypertravel is ever achieved, do not attempt this.
Right. Don't try this at home, kids.
If you have a spaceship, please don't try this.
Exactly. But yeah, no, it made sense to me that it would fall out of hyperspace and slow down and stuff. But I mean, the way, like you said, Nicki, the way that they animated that was really cool. And when it got all not quite rainbowy, but sort of rainbowy, I was like, oh, I guess that really makes sense. For some reason that made sense to me. I don't know why it did.
Like the distortion, the physical impact of going through something that's going that fast.
Mm-hmm. And slowing down at the same time.
Down. Exactly. And breaking through the kind of the energy that hyperspace puts you through. I think I was like, that's what I imagine it would be like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as controlled as just strictly being in hyperspace.
Right.
And you have to go through that.
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect when they were going to do it, but then when I saw it, I was like, well, that makes sense.
Exactly.
So,
that's what I thought too. And it was just so cool looking. I was like, oh, is this going to make them taller? Is this going to make, has time slowed now? Are they, are they back into regular time? And they didn't recover quickly. It took time because nobody had ever done this. And it was realistically like, oh my God, now we're out. What do we do? How do we stop this spinning?
And I think it's something the Inquisitor did not see coming.
No, I don't think, even with his knowledge of the Force, I don't think he saw that. Because, I mean, like us, he only knows the boundaries of the science of Star Wars. We've never seen that before. We've never even thought that was a possibility. And he's like, oh, well, that was different. Oh, we just have a shuttle. It's not the whole ship. Oops. This is weird. And I do love the tracking beacon. I thought that was really cool looking.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
And Kanan was just like, pull it off through it, destroyed it. It was like, eh.
So So what did you guys think of the Phimox?
The Fear Nox? I think they're called Fear Nox.
Oh.
I think. It's been a while since I've looked at it.
Yeah, they both sound right.
Anyways.
Potato.
Right. I like them. When I first saw them a couple episodes ago, I wasn't sure what to make of them. I was like, that's interesting. They didn't seem out of place to me, but I couldn't quite figure out what to think about them. But now that I've, seen them in action more, they definitely feel Star Wars animated. If they feel like they fit in that world, in the Star Wars animation world. But they're very much more cat / bat like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that.
And I got that more this time around than I did a couple episodes ago when Hera and Sabine encountered them. I really got the concept of them more this time, which because we spend more time just sort of looking at them without them running around past the screen. They were sitting still and moving slowly at times. So I got a better look at them this time. So maybe that was all it took for me. But I grasped the concept of them better this time, and I did not know how big they got. And when I saw the big one, I was like, I don't think that's supposed to happen.
Mama's not happy. That was one angry cat.
No kidding.
Oh my god. Yeah, I agree with you. I thought they fit in really well with the animated world of Star Wars, even going back to like the droids and the Ewoks animated series when I was a kid. They looked really cool, very sleek. I loved when they were calm. I just thought, because we'd seen what they could do. And to me, there's nothing scarier than knowing what that thing can do and seeing it sitting calmly, like it's waiting. And it's like, I was like, oh my god, the Inquisitor's not going to do the one little things.
Okay, you know what they remind me of? And I was trying to figure this out for the longest time, but now I finally did. They remind me of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and I love Toothless is my favorite dragon, so that's maybe why I was drawn to them. I was like, oh, I want one. I did. It was like in the episode, I don't know, was it the episode, the Empire Day or the one before that, where they had to tame that kitty cat in the I was like, I want one. It was so cute. And I see these things sitting all calm and almost like purring while Kanan and Ezra are sitting there kind of meditating. I'm like, oh, now they're cute. And they're right. They do look like they do harken back to Toothless.
It's like a dragon cat.
Exactly. If we could make those, that would be perfect. And then you see, the mama cat show up, and mamas don't like when their babies are in danger, but knowing they could get that big was really scary. I was like, oh my god, how many more down there? Because it just kind of came up out of nowhere right behind Ezra, and it was like, oh, is there an elevator under it, or is it that big?
This is like
that pit.
This is like the alligator in the sewer that somebody flushed down the toilet because it got too big.
Yes, exactly. And then it comes up behind you. Remember that alligator we flushed down? It's back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I thought they were great, and I love that the name kind of sounds like Minoc, because that's such a and they kind of have the baddie thing going on like the Minocs did. Because I love when they kind of connect things to the original trilogy. So I thought it was just such a great scene, and I was sad when some of them died. So I think they're doing a really good job over there at the writing and animation. It's like, you've made us love these ferocious bat cats.
I think it's interesting. Excuse me. That Kanan is constantly telling Ezra to slow down, clear your thoughts, and here we see an example of where Ezra really can't. He's trying to calm them, just like we saw in the other episode, trying to calm the little cat. He's trying to calm them, but he really just cannot. He's scared of them. And of course, if you're scared, they're going to be scared.
Or they're going to sense that you're weak and pounce. but I think that once Kanan jumped in, I think it was a little easier for Ezra to harness that stillness within him and to let go, which is something that all Jedi need to do. And
Yeah.
I think, and I made notes about that. I think in this episode, Ezra learned more about what a Jedi is and what a Jedi does than in any other episode where Kanan's tried to train him. I think, like Kanan said, it's like, this is the best, if you can do this, while you're trying to survive, you can harness that. That's what a Jedi is about. It's about being put into these situations, being able to focus. And he said, do what you do best. You survive. And it's like learning as you're going kind of thing. Learning
Right.
as you're thrown into the melee. And it stuck out to me as I was making notes. It was like, he really became a Padawan on that episode. He finally got it. I don't know if he's aware of that he got it, but I think he's aware now that he has the potential that Kanan sees in him. And I'm really intrigued as to why Kanan needs to talk to Hera. Like you said.
Well, he needs to talk to Hera because of what Ezra does later, when he drew on the dark side, and that's the issue. We gotta let everybody know about this.
Yeah, we have to do something to stop this,
Yeah.
to make sure that he doesn't go to that dark place. But I think, like with Luke and with Anakin, that's one of the things that a young Jedi has to overcome is the dark side, is the lure of the dark side. And like Yoda says, fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And once you can control that, then you've achieved something. Then that you have become a Jedi. So it's something that worried me because I could feel that that's what Ezra was using. He was using his fear and his anger to bring that Mama Bat Cat out to play. But it was also kind of playing into the hands of the Inquisitor a little bit.
Yeah.
Because he fixes that.
The other side of that was making me concerned for Ezra's sake is Ezra doesn't know really about the dark side. I mean, he heard the Inquisitor mention it. I think he mentioned it back in Rise of the Old Masters, but Kanan hasn't been teaching him about it. Kanan's been, trying to get the basics in him and, focus on being a Jedi rather than, saying, but this is what you have to look out for. Which
I think is a mistake.
Right. And Kanan admits that. But Ezra, when things get tough and he's cornered, he goes immediately and draws on that instinctively because that's sort of where his mindset lives, from when he was surviving before he met the crew of the Ghost. And he really grabbed it in a big way this time, and it was a little scary for him.
Yeah.
I was a little scared for him.
Yeah. I think he felt unnatural. I think it felt wrong to him, like to go as dark as he obviously did. And I think you're right. I think it's not something that Kanan has emphasized or talked about in his training is how to cope with the dark side, how to cope with your anger. He's always talking about quieting his mind, which is in a way is talking about like getting rid of anger. But I think even in episode 1, Qui-Gon warned a little Anakin about that, about the dark side. And I think it's something that Kanan needs to talk about with him. It's part of the training. They go hand in hand, the light side and the dark side. You can't, they go hand in hand. And there's such a fine line between that that a Padawan has to know the dangers. And I think Kanan might be realizing maybe he's not the best master because he never was a master. He was a kid when this all went down in episode 3. So he doesn't really have a whole lot of, resources to back him up, or he doesn't have a whole lot of training behind him to be able to adequately train Ezra. And I think he's maybe coming to terms with that too, is that he's not helping much. He's not really training him, and I think maybe he needs to really focus more on the training.
Yeah. Well, Kanan's learning as Ezra's learning.
Exactly.
Kanan's learning how to be a master because he's never had that responsibility before. Kanan's learning how to teach while Ezra's learning how to be a Jedi.
Right.
And so it is one of those interesting situations where, hindsight is always 20/20. And, as they're flying away to meet back up with the ghost, Kanan tells Ezra, I haven't been teaching you what I need to teach you.
Right. I think that showed that experience with the Inquisitor really kind of hit it home for Kanan.
Right. And the interesting thing about that whole experience is, according to Ezra, he doesn't remember it. He just knows it felt wrong and cold.
Right.
And I'm wondering if maybe farther down the road he will remember it, but won't tell Kanan that he does.
Right.
And
or he doesn't want to remember it because of how it made him feel afterwards.
Right.
It could be a mental block he's got. Which is, kind of a good thing in a sense, because he doesn't remember how he accessed that part of the Force, but it's also not a good thing because a Jedi has to be completely aware of their actions. So
yeah, you can't use your anger,
right,
to push someone away. I think it's interesting that, Ezra, he was scared of these creatures, but he was really kind of having the remembering about Zebo and about losing his parents and finding out the truth. It's all about fear, like we've been talking about in the last bit.
Yeah, and I think him forgiving and understanding Zebo and why Zebo couldn't do anything to help his parents, I think letting that anger go, it freed both Zebo and Ezra up a lot. It freed a lot of their emotions up. And as a Jedi, you cannot be emotional to that extent. I mean, he was holding on to it, and that's one of the things you have to get rid of is these attachments to the past, and not just like physical attachment, but emotional attachment and mental attachment to the negatives. I mean, Jedi access their emotions all the time, but they don't cling to them. And that's what Ezra was doing. He was clinging to anger. He was clinging to fear and sadness. And I think when he was able to let that go, he really became more introspective and kind of focused. He went inward rather than lashing out, which I thought was a great change for him.
So there's a bit about Fulcrum. So Jason, what are your thoughts about Fulcrum? As a character, like who he could be, who she could be. What do you think?
Oh man. Well, first of all, I don't think it's Bail Organa. I know that's one of the common suspicions out there.
Right, because of the ship.
Well, yeah, because of the ship, and I'm trying to remember. I think the ship Bail Organa had in Droids in Distress had red markings on it, or different markings on it. But I'd have to go back and look. I haven't had a chance to do that. I think an easy answer could be Senator Gale Travis, the guy who keeps breaking in on the holo transmissions. I think that could be an easy place to go with it. But I don't think it would be the most interesting. I would rather see somebody, I don't know.
Someone new.
I don't know if someone new. One of the other suspicions I had was that it could be Sham Syndulla, who is Hera's uncle and was in the Clone Wars. That was one of the thoughts I had early on, but now I'm not so sure. And I've heard a lot of theories going around that it might be Ahsoka.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I heard anyone on a podcast. I heard them putting the voice through a voice mixer or something, and they got like Ahsoka's voice out of it. But that could have just been kind of like sometimes you kind of are pulling at straws and you think you're hearing something. But yeah, it's very possible.
Your brain kind of tries to go to the most likely or something familiar, and I think having him think Ahsoka is very natural. I do think it's interesting that Hera doesn't let anyone else meet Fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me says it might be, a member of her family, or maybe it is Ahsoka. Now that I'm aware of this rumor, maybe it is. Maybe it's something that they're not supposed to know.
While I think Ahsoka will show up in the series at some point, I think they would wait until season 2 just to let the new characters get established.
Right, I totally agree.
Before bringing in such a huge fan favorite character like Ahsoka into the show. One other thought I heard out there was that it could be Lux Bonteri, who of course Ahsoka had feelings for back in the Clone Wars. He's the separatist senator's kid. That his mother was murdered, and then he became the rebel leader on Onderon back in the Clone Wars. And so that was another already established character that I heard a theory for. So personally, I don't know. There's a lot of theories out there. I think it would be interesting if it was Rex, Captain Rex, but.
I would love that personally. I'd love that character so much.
Old Rex.
Old Rex. It breaks my heart to think that he with Order when they executed the Order and 66 and the clones turned.
Hey Jason, can you do a execute Order 66?
Execute Order 66.
Oh my God, creepy. Okay, just got chills.
Excellent.
Part of me, because I love that character so much, and a lot of it is when I introduced the show to my nephew when he was about 3. He really loves Rex. He is he's 9 now, and he still his favorite Star Wars character, and he's seen everything. And so part of me is like, for my nephew's sake, I don't want Rex to have been one of those clones who went bad. So part of me wants him to have something happen to him in the Clone Wars, so that he wouldn't go bad. But I would also, and maybe it's, if Echo had survived, he was my other favorite clone. I could see him as Fulcrum too. But I would not mind if it was Rex, if something happened and he didn't go bad. But he'd also be pretty old because the clones age at, was it 3 times the normal rate?
It's twice.
It's twice the normal age.
Yeah. So I mean, he'd be pretty old by now.
I don't have anyone.
He can't do it.
I don't have any one solid idea of who this could be. I'm just excited to find out, and I might have been the first one to put Rex out there as Fulcrum. I don't know. I don't know if I've heard that theory out there
haven't
before.
heard it before.
But, just another character to throw out there to muddy the waters even more. So,
An older Rex who's, joined the Rebels, and because maybe something misfired and his goodness overcame the programming. I don't know.
And it's most likely now that his age, most likely his features are indistinguishable from a clone that, is walking around.
Right, I think most of the clones by now are probably out of service.
I mean, I think Vader's fist, the 501st, I think that's like one of the last legions of clone troopers, right?
I think they get switched over to regular stormtroopers, but they're an elite group of stormtroopers.
Yeah, it's just a division it's just Vader's personal group of stormtroopers. Which is what the Vader's Fist is. It's just the personal, his chosen little battalion, his chosen garrison. As a member of that group, I'm, very proud to be a part of that, to be a member of Vader's Fist, even though I'm not a stormtrooper. But I think after the clones kind of age out of active duty, I really think it becomes like the police force, and you just recruit from everywhere. I think a lot of kids probably are drafted into like the Imperial Navy or the Imperial cavalry. So I don't think at this time, I don't think we have many clones left because they'd be too old.
Fair enough.
I think that we're dealing with, because we've noticed some of them are not quite bright. And and we noticed in the original trilogy that not all the stormtroopers are very smart either, and nobody can shoot. Well, they can shoot, they just can't hit anything. But I think that by the time we get to Rebels, I really think that we're dealing with recruits from just anywhere, and I think we're dealing with drafted, forces who are drafted into service.
And remember, we're 14, 15 years after Revenge of the Sith at this point, which is 28 to 30 years for clones.
And who were already in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
So we're talking, you don't want 50, 60-year-old troops out there.
No.
It would explain the inability to hit anything, though.
Yes. If there are any clones still in service, it would be like tacticians and admirals,
Right.
But I would say that they're pretty well phased out by this point.
Yeah.
So.
In general, we basically discussed the battle, but what did you guys think of Ezra controlling one of these things and to actually attacking the Inquisitor? I thought that was pretty cool, just to because we haven't really seen that in Star Wars. Someone taking control of something and to attack another. And of course, the Inquisitor, he can do a lot, but he was a little caught off guard by this thing jumping on him. And
well, I think the off guard probably was because of Ezra, and he didn't expect that from that kid. He just thought, there's this annoying kid who, look, he's gonna sick the kitty cat. Oh crap. He's controlling this thing. I think it probably will put Ezra in his crosshairs even more, and maybe want him to join him as dark side, because he's obviously capable of using the dark side of the Force. So I think he's become a target for the Inquisitor now.
Yeah. No, it surprised me. First of all, I was like, oh wow, I did not realize he was that powerful. Not only to drag this gigantic fear-knock, dragon cat bat thingy up from the bottom of this pit to fight for him, but that at the same time, he's such out of control with his Force ability that all the little rocks and debris within the area are lifting up and rising, and just because he's not in control of it, he's of what he's doing. He's got this big general thing that he wants. He needs something to attack the Inquisitor in order to save him and Kanan, and that's what his rage drug up was this giant thing.
With a giant fat cat dragon.
Yes, and so I was first shocked that he was able to do that, and then that's not good. That was my other thing. That's not a good thing for him to be able to do, because of how dark that went for him. And obviously Kanan recognized that. So
yeah, I think it scared Kanan more than the Inquisitor, but not as much as it scared Ezra. And I think that you're right with that he wasn't able to just control the Bat-Cat Dragon. He had all these other things were happening as a byproduct, and he couldn't control that. And I think it showed his naivete and his lack of focus, in a sense, because you really should just focus on the one thing. And I think even the fact that he was able to summon and control that beast for as long as he did, it definitely is opening up new possibilities for story and for interactions with the Empire.
Right. I think it's interesting that it kind of takes me back to I forget what episode it was. I think it was Joy in Distress, or maybe it was after that. It was Flight or Fight. When Ezra, when we first see him, when Zeb was in trouble, Ezra force pushed Captain Agent
Callus?
Agent Callus.
Agent Callus. Was that the episode, or am I?
That was Droids in Distress.
Droids in
Yeah.
Distress. Okay, that was our first guess. So that was kind of the first kind of hint, and there Kanan is surprised, and this kind of takes it to another level.
Mm-hmm.
Of his ability slowly unraveling, because oftentimes his abilities being shown are just are the kind of abilities that Chopper kind of makes fun of. Like the ball,
not being able to hit the ball.
Yeah, or hovering, or kind of pretending the ball is hovering.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a big fan of Chopper, Jason.
I am. I was a huge fan of him going into it because he looked just great, but he's become a bit of a troublemaker.
He is.
And I'm like, Chopper, you're so great, but just tone it down a little bit, please.
He's like R2 times 10 in the mischievous. Yeah, I have in my notes when you see Chopper, it's like, no, Chopper.
Right.
I'm
And
so
although
sad.
I
Came back.
I like the way. I like the way Chopper was used in these two episodes, where it was, much more supportive and doing everything with the mission in mind rather than just causing havoc for the sheer pleasure of it.
I also like that they didn't rely on him. They couldn't rely on him as much because it's like, okay, Chopper, do this. Chopper, fix this. And it's like, you can't really do that. So they really had to come together as a team and figure out, because they couldn't use Chopper, and they had to be Chopper, do what Chopper would do for them.
Yeah. Right. So I think we can starting to wrap this up. They get back to the Ghost after all this happened, and I know there's these different times where the crew of the Ghost, they kind of have their time where they, we saw Zeb kind of, not wanting to talk to anyone and just like going into the room and kind of like wanting to be alone, and kind of a similar situation happens here. And and like we mentioned earlier before, Kanan, he wants to talk to Hera, Sabine and Hera, they want to talk to Ezra. So the episode kind of has a general kind of, opposed to last episode, which was a cliffhanger, this was a little more wrapped up.
Right. We just have some questions and, finding out what happened to Ezra's parents. And I think the fact that Sabine and Hera are so protective of him now, Hera always has been, but Sabine now is even more protective of Ezra than I think even Hera is, and really wants him to be happy and wants him to find his place. And when she gave him that hollow with the picture of his parents.
Yeah, that was very touching.
It was.
It's his birthday.
Yeah, because Empire Day is his birthday. And it really was very sweet of her, and I think we're seeing a different side to her character that I really like.
Right. My only question is, now that Kanan was going to is letting Ezra have his time by himself, so he stopped Hera from telling Ezra what Zebo told her about Ezra's parents. My only question now is, how long before we find out? Because Hera is very good at keeping secrets, as we've found out, and so how long is she going to sit on that information? Because, obviously he's going through a lot right now, and he doesn't need the distraction of finding out, whatever this information is. And, is she going to try and wait for the right time? And then what if it comes at a time where he absolutely, what if he runs into his parents before she tells him about it? And then he's going to get mad that she didn't tell him, that sort of thing. I'm wondering if that's going to come back. Either are we going to find out next episode when they come back in January, or are we not going to find out until down the road? That's my biggest question out of this.
Right.
So.
Yeah, will she defer to Kanan? Like, will she tell him, and then he says, we can't tell him this because ABC. We will tell him when he needs to know, when it's not too much of a, distraction to his training. So yeah, I had that question too. It was, when are we going to find out what happened to the parents? When are we going to find out? I mean, we could find out before Ezra finds out.
That's true.
So they might do that, but I really kind of think it should be a question that is kind of lingering for a while. I think maybe season 2 even, or the end of season 1, because Ezra needs time to stop being a pouty little brat. And which he kind of stopped at the end of this episode. He kind of was more focused, but I think he might not be ready to hear, because it would probably change his whole view of his childhood and what he's doing and what he's done, and it might be just too much. And I think that Hera will defer to Kanan on that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So wrapping. Oh, were you going to say something else?
No, I was just going to agree, and I think that will end up being saved. I think the likelihood of that being saved for farther down the road rather than coming right back and answering that question is more likely. So
Because it's like we want
Which-
stuff to take us into season 2 and possibly
Right,
season
which-
3. And
Which drives me nuts because I want to know what the heck is going on, but
right,
it
but
does make more.
storytelling wise, you're right. It makes more sense.
It makes so much more sense to wait. Which drives me nuts. But
So-
anyways,
Yeah.
So what are your, so I guess kind of wrapping this up, what are your final thoughts on this, either, this episode and this part of the season as a whole, going into the second half? What are your thoughts? Jason?
the episode was great. It definitely kicked things up a notch as far as Rebels is concerned. I've enjoyed Rebels. I've liked the more lighthearted episodes. I've really liked episodes like The Old Masters, where we started to delve into, what's going on with the Inquisitor and the Force and stuff like that. But this, the season's been pretty good so far, but this just kicked things up a notch. And I'm really interested to see if they're able to keep this up for the rest of the season, and then where they go after the season is done. It definitely left us on a really good note, in my opinion, for the last half of the season, and it sets a whole bunch of things up for what we could get for a great season finale. And like any good TV show or any good story, it answers some questions but leaves us with even more. So.
Nicki, what about you?
This was probably my favorite episode of the season so far. I totally agree with Jason. I think that it's really setting us up for what's to come, and we don't know what's to come, and yet we're very intrigued. I think it's this first half of the season has been way better than I expected it to be. I thought it might start out really slowly and then kick up like big cliffhanger season 1 at the end of season 1. And I think that they've maintained such a great clip of pace that it's become even better than I expected. I knew I was going to like it, but I didn't know I was going to like it this much. And as for this episode, the Inquisitor just rocks the dark side and that lightsaber duel just made my week when that aired. I was like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing ever. Because he was so good. I mean, this is not someone that you want to go up against. And I love that they're making him more formidable. Like, we're learning more and more about him and his abilities as we're learning about the crew of the Ghost. I like that we're getting more Sabine lately, because I really was waiting for her story. Now I want more Zev, because he's kind of gone into the background a little bit. And I'm like, no, you're too big of a personality to do that. And so I'm looking forward to the return of Rebels more than I actually anticipated the beginning of Rebels. So.
I agree. I basically echoing what you guys say. I mean, great episode. Really, Rebels is more than what I expected. I really had no idea what to expect except a few characters. But it's a whole new era of Star Wars, and we're speaking today on the 18th, and in 1 year, Episode 7 is coming.
Yeah.
So much.
Woo!
Like George Lucas would say, faster, more intense, and aside from a few a character credit, we're basically in a post Lucas time, and it's just bringing in a whole different generation of Star Wars fans, and this season could be the first exposure for some kids to Star Wars. So I think that's
right.
cool. Looking for more Zeb and Chopper are my two favorites. But yeah, overall a great first half. I definitely look forward to them upping the ante in the next half. And we don't have to wait a few months. We only have to, coming back in the first week. So
Right.
all right. So I think that's it. So Jason, where can people find you if you want to know what's going on?
All right. Well, you can find me and Carl at the Wampa's Lair podcast. That's facebook.com/Wampa's Lair podcast. Twitter is at Wampa's Lair. And we are, of course, hosted on StarWarsReport.com with a whole bunch of other great podcasts over there. So.
And Nicki, where can they find us?
You can find us on Twitter at Radio Free Indoor, and also go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Radio Free Indoor. You can find Jonathan on Twitter at JEBell49er and me at iHeartColson.
Cool. And so just come like the Facebook page, interact with us, leave us an iTunes review, and listen to our other show. They'll both be coming out hopefully around the same time as we get closer and closer to the new year. And 2015 is just going to be huge. It's just going to fly by. Episode 7 and a new season of Rebels is coming down the pipe. Everything's just boom, boom, boom. So I think that's it. I think that's all. For Jason, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Nicki.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.